Now, when parents start talking about parents' rights, they are appealing to this long history of a very well-meaning and generally emancipatory, positive, freedom-loving respect for rights, but they are blurring categories in ways that I think are pretty deliberate and nefarious, at least at the high levels of parental rights organizing. So unlike the kind of rights that just pertain to everybody, universal rights like I'm a human, so you can't arbitrarily kill me, for example, or rights that pertain to specific characteristics like you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, they are employing a different kind of identity, like a role identity, like I had children, and making that the basis for a rights claim. So because I had children, you owe me all these things and I'm entitled to all these freedoms because I'm a parent. That is sort of the structure of the claim. And it's not an accident because, as we've already seen, and this isn't news to you, a lot of so-called parents' rights groups are really taking aim at the rights of other specific individuals and groups of individuals. LGBTQ people are a favorite target. We saw how already the Parents' Rights in Education bill in Florida is really just a cover for trying to unroll decades of progress in LGBTQ inclusion and rights. So they see that this other group of people or other individuals have made gains in rights, in sometimes getting protection against discrimination, and in sometimes getting their experiences better represented in education. And parents' rights provides a very convenient foil against the rights of LGBTQ people or other minority groups. So by appropriating rights and identity language, parents are saying, we're a minority too, or we're discriminated against too, and you can't just give all those other people all of their rights and not give us our rights. They are implicitly equating or contrasting different kinds of rights, which are actually not the same in terms of category. Why? LGBTQ people were, in fact, legally discriminated against in many ways as individuals, deprived of the same kinds of freedoms and opportunities that all other individuals were able to access. Progress was made in recognizing and protecting the rights of LGBTQ people, including in education, for example, by not talking about families in heteronormative and exclusionary ways in schools. And so they had redress through activism that was oriented around identity and rights language. Parents who oppose LGBTQ rights, parents who are fundamentally only interested in delivering a socially conservative curriculum relating to the family and gender, have therefore appropriated identity and rights language to say, but now you're trampling our rights. This is a false dichotomy. This doesn't mean that there's nothing to parents' concerns. As Lisa said, we can understand a number of ways that parents may have legitimate concerns about curriculum that changes quickly or is passed without consulting them or whatever, but that doesn't mean that they have the same kinds of rights to be protected from discrimination in the way that minority groups do, or that parents' rights are a function of kind of universal human rights. Next slide, please. So is there a conflict of rights going on here? Click. We can understand conflicts of rights as the interests of different stakeholders clashing and needing to be resolved in a pluralistic society. The structure of many political dilemmas, and especially education dilemmas, has this form. It seems like different people's interests are coming into conflict. So here's the group of stakeholders who call themselves parents are claiming rights, although as I just explained, rights language is a bit forced in this case, but they have interests. Whom are their interests coming into conflict with? You can just click a bunch of times, Lisa, because I had this animated. First of all, the government. So the government, as we said, is the origin of public schooling. And ironically, of course, most people in government are also parents. And a lot of parents work in government or work in education. So this is apples and oranges. These are not groups of people with distinct identities that never overlap. But parents may claim that their rights are being encroached on by the overreach of the government, and therefore they need to reassert their, scare quotes, rights as parents. But there are other stakeholders in this picture. Keep clicking. There are the educators, and let's not forget the children. So how are these all related? The educators, at least in public schools, do represent an arm of the government, and parents may therefore claim that they are in conflict with educators, which is partly why they storm school board meetings and sometimes argue with or even try to intimidate their children's teachers, because they say, I'm the child's parent, you're just a teacher. I have more of a right to raise my child than you do.
Correct.
But again, this is a false dichotomy. A, teachers and educators are mostly parents as well. B, although they may work for the government, that doesn't mean that they even agree with everything that the government says or even the curriculum they're required to teach.
Oh my
Educators
God.
actually teach under a lot of stress because they have to implement curricula and policies that are not generally their personal choices, but just what the state or the jurisdiction is telling them. And most fundamentally, the stakeholders that everybody is fighting over here are the children. Now, it makes sense that children wouldn't themselves be determining curriculum or education policy, but whoever is making the decisions, all curriculum and education policy should in principle be designed with children's interests in mind. So the government says they're protecting children, parents say they're protecting children, teachers say they're protecting children. How can all these things be true at the same time if everybody is disagreeing and claiming their rights are being trampled? What is happening here is an unfortunate outcome of the way that liberal societies structure rights, which tends to pit individuals and groups against each other and overlook the ways that we actually have shared aims and need to cooperate in the interests of other groups. In this case, children actually depend on parents and teachers and many other adults working together. So arguing that one group or one individual has rights that trump the authority of the other group or the other individual tends to deprive children of their due regard. Although there's no universal declaration of the rights of the parent or convention on parents' rights, as Lisa mentioned, this is very much in flux, especially in the United States. They are attempting to get parents' rights enshrined more formally. Children's rights have, in fact, been recognized internationally for many years, and children's rights are defined in such a way, very insightfully, I think, that the authors of the Convention on the Rights of the Child are giving parents appropriate authority and leeway in the raising of their children. So the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which you see here, has many, many articles, but I'm just pulling out Article 5, which is blown up on the side, which says that parties, meaning anyone with power, so that could be the government, that could be teachers, that could be educational policymakers, shall respect the responsibilities, rights, and duties of parents, et cetera, in the exercise by the child of the rights recognized in the present convention. What that means is when parents exercise their authority, you can call it rights, but it's also a responsibility and a duty, they should do so with the rights of the child in mind. The rights of the parents are not supposed to be distinct from and in competition with the rights of the child. They're supposed to be harmonious. The reason that we do give parents a lot of leeway in law and in custom in the raising of their children is because in the normal scheme of things, parents actually are best positioned to meet their children's interests.
Smartest thing you said all day.
Educational decisions for their children.
Exactly.
It's not because children are parents' property and parents can just do whatever they want with them. Or normal scheme of things, parents actually are best positioned to meet their children's interests and make educational decisions for their children. It's not because children are parents' property and parents can just do whatever they want with them, or that being a parent, like having successfully reproduced, gives you inalienable rights to control the life of another person.
Oh my God.
That has never been legally enshrined in a universal convention or in American law either. So, well, maybe Lisa can correct me on the history, but I wouldn't want to live in a place where that's enshrined in law. So when we talk about parents' rights, there is no separate list of things to which parents are entitled legally or by convention. And insofar as we do give parents a lot of authority, so yes, parents have more authority over their children than teachers do. I don't think anyone's really disputing that.
Finally.
It just comes down to specific cases. We give them that much authority because it's usually in the best interests of the child. The question is, when there's a conflict, what is in the best interests of the child? Next slide. No, not a slide? Right. Sexuality education, of course, is just a bellwether for all of these conflicts. This is an image taken from a protest over sexuality education in Toronto, where I live. And there's a lot that could be commented on here, but something that's really ironic is when parents are opposing sex education on the grounds of parents' rights or parental choice, they sometimes advertise their hypocrisy like on placards very loudly and clearly. How is it that a child could be standing there holding a sign saying, "My child, my choice," when the parents who gave them the placard are claiming that it is theirs, the parents' choice, what to do with the child? The child does not have any choice here, and the parents are arguing for their political position on the grounds that as parents, they have final, maybe even exclusive authority over their children. So whose choice is it really? Children are clearly being enlisted at an age when they're far too young to object, to secure their so-called parents' rights without even understanding what's at stake. This is just an illustration of the false dichotomy between parents' rights and children's rights. Therefore, to conclude my little section here, parents' rights, not legally enshrined, not universally recognized. There is no slate of things to which all parents are entitled just because they reproduced. But the rhetoric of parents' rights very successfully agitates people and picks up on other kinds of interests and values that we probably do want to recognize. We do want to recognize that parents are and should be very involved in their children's sexuality education, and that sometimes the government or teachers do things that we want to object to. And as parents, we have to have appropriate mechanisms for expressing that dissent and for advancing our own values. None of that translates into parental monopoly over sex ed. Because in addition to parents, you have teachers, you have children, the government, policymakers, as well as healthcare professionals like nurses, as well as community leaders, including clergy people, many of whom have legitimate, valuable roles to play in the sexuality education of children. As I said before, all of the adults' activities should, in principle, be oriented toward the well-being of children. Children's rights are kind of the linchpin here, not parents' rights, but children's rights, even if it's the case that parents have the next most importance after children in this list here. But we know, again, from research and from historical experience, that children's needs are best served when all the adults fulfill their respective roles. That doesn't mean they have to agree about everything. It means that they all have to be trusted sources of information and support for children, and that trying to reduce the children's circle of support to one stakeholder or one particular message tends to put in danger children who don't have access to other views and other sources of information. I'm not sure if there's anything else on this slide. Click.
I am getting nothing. Here we go. Okay, so I think Lauren and I are pretty much done. We have hit our hour, and we feel like you are probably pretty well educated now. So thank you to everybody for joining us, even in this video kind of format, and have a wonderful day.